Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of ethical hacking.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, we're using a CEH training module to really get into the details.
Yeah, a deep dive indeed.
Whether you're like a cybersecurity pro or just curious about staying safe online, this is for you.
Absolutely.
We'll be talking about different types of hackers, what makes them tick.
Right, the motivations.
Yeah, and the tools and techniques they use.
The how-tos.
Exactly. And we'll even touch on the legal side of things with cyber laws.
Gotta know the rules of the game.
Right. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is hacking?
Yeah.
Most people probably picture like shadowy figures in hoodies.
Yeah, the Hollywood image, right?
Yeah, but it's more than that, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's about finding vulnerabilities in systems.
Okay, so like weaknesses.
Exactly, like finding a weak spot in a fence and figuring out how to get through.
Oh, okay, I see.
But the why behind it, the motivation, that can be different.
Right, and our source material talks about different types of hackers with different motivations. We've got the good guys, the ethical hackers, or white hats. They use their skills to help organizations improve their security.
Like the good guys in a Western, but online.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey.
Then there are the bad guys, the black hats,
Right.
who exploit those weaknesses for personal gain.
For money, for the thrill of it, lots of reasons.
It's crazy how hacking can be used for such different things.
It's a tool like any other, depends who's using it.
So how do we protect ourselves from those black hats? Our source material emphasizes the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability.
With the CIA triad, yes, it's foundational.
But what does it all mean?
Okay, so think of it like a three-legged stool for cybersecurity.
Okay.
Confidentiality is like keeping information secret, your passwords, financial data.
So only the right people see it.
Exactly. Then integrity, make sure data hasn't been messed with so you know it's accurate.
So you can trust it.
Right. And finally, availability.
Yeah.
This means the authorized users can access the information whenever they need it.
So it's not just locked away, but accessible at the right time.
Exactly. All three are crucial.
Our source also mentions two more elements: authenticity and non-repudiation.
Ooh, those sound a little more technical.
Right, I was kind of confused by them.
They're actually pretty straightforward. Think of authenticity like verifying a signature.
Okay.
It's making sure the information's coming from a trusted source.
Oh, yeah.
And non-repudiation is like getting a delivery confirmation. You can't deny you sent it.
So it's about accountability online.
Yes. Very important, where things can be so anonymous.
This is it. Speaking of accountability, the source goes into the CEH methodology, which is how ethical hackers find and fix vulnerabilities.
Yeah. It's a systematic approach.
Sounds like a detective's investigation.
A good way to think about it starts with footprinting, gathering info about the target.
Oh, so like background research?
Exactly. Scanning websites, databases, even social engineering.
Social engineering.
Yeah, using people skills to get info, it happens.
Wow, so being careful what we share online is really important.
More than ever, yeah.
What's next in the CEH methodology?
After footprinting comes scanning, using tools to probe the system for weaknesses.
So like using technology to pinpoint the weak spots.
Precisely. It helps to narrow down the investigation.
Makes sense. And then do they actually try to break in?
Not quite yet.
Yeah.
The next step is enumeration, getting detailed info about the system.
Like usernames and passwords?
That kind of thing, yeah. Building a more complete picture.
But they're not doing anything illegal, right? This is all with permission.
Right. Ethical hackers have a strict code of conduct. They get permission first.
That's reassuring. So they've gathered info, scanned the system, and enumerated potential targets.
Yep.
What's next?
Vulnerability analysis. They figure out how serious each weakness is and how it could be exploited.
Like a doctor examining a patient.
Exactly. Prioritizing what needs attention first.
Kind of unsettling to think about all these vulnerabilities out there.
That's why ethical hacking is so important. It's about finding them before the bad guys do.
So like preventative security?
Absolutely. You want to fix the cracks before they become major problems.
That's a good analogy. This is also fascinating, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Oh yeah, there's so much more to explore.
Well, let's take a deeper dive into the world of ethical hacking after a quick break.
Sounds good to me.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were talking about the CEH methodology, how ethical hackers use it
Right.
to find those vulnerabilities. We left off on vulnerability analysis, where they figure out how serious each weakness is.
Yeah, like a doctor diagnosing a patient?
Right, figuring out what to treat first.
Exactly. And just like a doctor might recommend different treatments, depending on how serious things are,
Okay.
ethical hackers, they'll suggest different solutions
Oh.
based on the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Some might be easy fixes, like updating software.
Oh, right.
But others might require more complex solutions, like redesigning a whole system.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so they've identified the vulnerabilities,
Right.
figured out how bad they are. What's the final stage in this whole ethical hacking process?
The final stage is system hacking.
Okay.
That's where everything comes together.
Uh-huh.
The ethical hacker actually tries to exploit the vulnerabilities, like a simulation,
Oh, wow.
but it's all done with permission in a safe environment.
So it's like a practice run for a real cyber attack.
Exactly. You see how strong the defenses are, find any gaps.
But wouldn't that, expose the system to even more risk?
That's a good question.
If an ethical hacker can break in, couldn't a real attacker?
It's a possibility, but remember, ethical hackers are pros. They follow a strict code, document everything, and work with the organization to fix the problems.
This is like having someone you trust point out your weaknesses.
Yeah, so you can fix them before someone with bad intentions finds them.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about the technical stuff, but our source also mentions risk management.
Right, the bigger picture.
Yeah, which sounds more strategic.
Risk management is essential for anyone online,
Yeah.
whether it's an organization or just you and me.
So what does that involve?
It's all about understanding and mitigating the risks of technology.
Oh, okay.
It's like, being aware of the dangers before you go hiking in the wilderness.
Right, preparing yourself.
Exactly. And our source breaks down risk management into 5 phases.
5 phases.
The first one is risk identification.
Okay. So figuring out what could go wrong.
That's the first step. You got to know what you're dealing with.
So taking inventory of your systems, your data, your online activity.
Exactly. Identifying the potential threats to those things,
Right.
both from inside and outside.
Gotcha. So you've identified the risks. Then what?
Then comes risk assessment.
Okay.
That's where you figure out how likely each risk is and what the impact would be if it happens.
So putting a price tag on each risk.
Yeah, you could say that. Prioritizing what needs the most attention. Then it's risk treatment.
Okay.
This is where you actually do something about those risks.
Okay.
Developing strategies to manage them.
What kind of strategies?
Lots of things. Implementing security controls, updating software, training employees.
So coming up with a plan of attack for each risk.
Yeah, finding the best way to deal with it.
And how do you know what the best way is?
Well, it depends on the risk, what resources you have, and how much risk you're willing to accept.
So it's a balancing act.
Right. You don't want security to be so tight, it stops people from working or enjoying their lives.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've identified the risks, assessed them, and developed strategies.
Right.
What's next?
Next is risk tracking,
Okay.
making sure your strategies are working.
So it's not a one-time thing. You have to keep checking.
Exactly. Things change constantly online, new threats pop up.
Right.
So you gotta be vigilant.
It's like tending a garden.
I like that. You gotta keep weeding out the threats, make sure your security stays healthy.
And the final phase.
The final phase is risk review.
Okay.
That's where you look at the whole picture,
Mm-hmm.
see if your overall approach to risk management is working.
So checking if you're meeting your goals, if your controls are good enough.
Exactly. Making sure you're staying ahead of the curve.
So risk management is a continuous cycle.
Absolutely. Always adapting, always improving.
Speaking of adapting, let's go back to the cyber kill chain.
Okay.
We talked about the first stages, reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery.
Right, the attacker's getting ready.
And then comes exploitation.
Yes, where they actually try to break in.
This is where things get real.
It is. They use the vulnerabilities they've found, stolen passwords, software bugs, whatever works.
Wow, so they were really trying hard.
Oh, yeah. And if they get in, they move to the installation stage.
Okay.
That's where they dig in, install malware, create backdoors.
So setting up shop.
Exactly. They want to stay even if you fix the original problem.
That's scary. How do you stop them from getting that far?
Everything we've talked about helps.
Right.
Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, keeping your software updated, being wary of phishing emails, having a good risk management plan.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's all about making yourself a harder target.
So being proactive and aware.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility.
This has been incredibly informative, but there's still more to explore.
Definitely.
Let's continue our deep dive into the world of ethical hacking. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about ethical hacking, and man, it's a lot to take in.
It is. It really is a whole world in itself.
Right. And before, we were talking about how attackers can really get entrenched in a system.
Yeah, if you don't stop them early.
We were on the installation stage of that cyber kill chain.
Right, where they're setting up shop, basically.
Yeah, what happens after that? They're already in. What more can they do?
Well, that's when they usually move to the command and control stage.
Command and control.
Yeah, think of it like they're setting up a remote control system.
Okay.
They've got that backdoor channel to talk to the system, so they can give it commands from far away.
So they're not just breaking in, they're taking over the controls.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of things could they do at this stage? Like real-world examples?
Well, it all depends on what their goal is, right?
Right.
They could steal data, install more malware, spy on what you're doing.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, or even use your computer to attack someone else.
No way. So my computer could be part of a botnet without me even knowing.
It's possible, yeah. That's why knowing about this cyber kill chain is so important.
Yeah, you can see what they might do.
Right, and hopefully stop them before it gets to that point.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So they've got control. What's the final stage then?
The final stage is actions on objectives.
Okay.
That's where they actually achieve what they set out to do.
So it could be anything.
Pretty much, yeah. Stealing money, disrupting a website, leaking secrets. It all depends.
Man, that's a lot of power once they get that far.
It is, and it shows why everything we've talked about is so important.
Right, from the CIA triad to risk management, all of it.
You got to have those layers of protection.
Now, our source also talked about cyber laws. Why are those important in this whole ethical hacking thing?
Well, cyber laws are basically the rules of the road online.
Okay, so like traffic laws, but for the internet.
Yeah, kind of. They tell you what you can and can't do and what'll happen if you break the rules.
So even ethical hackers have to follow them.
Oh, absolutely. It's part of being ethical, but also it keeps them from getting in trouble with the real law.
So it's not just about doing the right thing, it's about doing it legally.
Exactly. And those laws are important for catching the bad guys, too.
Right. Gotta hold them accountable.
And protect the victims.
It seems like those cyber laws must be changing all the time with how fast tech changes.
Oh, yeah. They're constantly playing catch-up.
Gotta stay on top of it. Well, this deep dive into ethical hacking has been really, really interesting.
I'm glad you think so.
It's definitely opened my eyes to a whole new world and how vulnerable we all are.
That's the first step. Awareness.
Right. Knowing the risks.
Exactly. Then you can start to protect yourself.
Exactly. So what's the one big thing you want our listener to take away from all this?
I'd say stay curious, stay informed, and stay proactive.
I like that.
Cybersecurity isn't a one-time thing. It's a constant process.
A journey, not a destination.
I like that. There's always something new to learn, new threats to adapt to.
And new ways to protect yourself.
Precisely.
That's some great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ethical hacking. It's been fascinating.
Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, stay safe out there in the digital world.